Hello boys and girls in YouTube land. Today we are doing a review and sort of overview of the New Bright RC Pro Reaper. RC Pro is New Bright's sort of upscale, more power, basically almost into hobby grade, but not quite, and I'll go over the difference between toy grade and hobby grade. Here we have a toy grade car you can buy from Walmart, $60. Here we have a hobby grade RC car that from Hobbytown USA you can buy it for $200, but I have done some pretty extensive modifications to it, and I will go over those quickly when I get to that. First thing I want to show is with RC cars, the shell can be taken off like that. Well, one of the biggest things that you can go ahead and see is this little clip is metal. This is what holds on hobby grade. This little clip is plastic. This is what holds on the toy grade RC car. So there's one fundamental difference that just goes to show. Another is parts and the way they work. The steering on the Reaper is not all that great, not powerful at all. And the first one I had, it takes, you can actually look up under here, and up front there is a little cap that you can take off, and that's a 180 size motor. Well, I had two Extreme Production Pro 180 motors, the third version, so the most powerful ones they make right now. And after I got it installed, at first I smelled it and I didn't think anything of it, and then I saw the deadly blue smoke that immediately lets you know that you've killed electronics. Some pros about the Reaper. Now that they're trying to sort of, I guess, get into the hobby market, I'm going to show you the power that it has. If I get the damn cover back on. There we go. But we will turn the Reaper on. Okay, it's on. And with the Reaper, one cool thing about it is, cool but also a con, is it uses 4 different bandwidths. 909.06 megahertz, 913.06 megahertz, 917.06 megahertz, or 921.06 megahertz. That makes it so 4 of these can be ran at the same time, and you just select it by one of these 4 buttons. The controller is actually, this is a almost professional. This came with my Hellion Dominus, and it has proportional steering, proportional throttle, everything, the works basically. But with this, you do have proportional. You do have proportional throttle, but you do not have proportional steering. And I can show that simply by this. I turn this and it turns all the way. And one thing that really sucks is this is on a bed. There's no power. So, like I said, I tried to use one of my Pro 180 motors, and it worked for about 2 or 3 minutes, and then I saw it drew too much current, so it ended up frying some part of the board, so I returned it and got another one and just decided not to mess with it. It's got a lot of power. I'll quickly demonstrate the power of it. It's another really good thing about it, seeing that they're getting into the hobby thing, is it uses a lithium-ion battery, so that is a big, and it actually says it's 500 milliamp hour, so not all that much, but I have 2 batteries, so that helps. So I have, all I gotta do is change out a battery. But basically, anytime you get it full throttle going forward, it will lift up the front wheels, as you see. And it does it quite easily. So there's a lot of power there. So that's another big pro. But the biggest thing is non-proportional steering. Another big difference between toy grade and hobby grade is parts. With my Hellion Dominus, I was actually able to change the motor from the stock motor to a Castle Sidewinder with a Castle ESC that can take, I believe, 4 cell lithium polymer batteries. At the moment, I'm just running a 2 cell, so 7.4 volt, 5,000 milliamp with a 50 amp peak discharge. And as you can see with this thing's heavy, and it has a aluminum aluminum chassis. And I'm actually going to get some metal bulkheads, either 3D printed or machined for me somehow. I have some friends that work at some machine shops, and I can tell simply by looking at them. You can make these very easily because they're flat. You just gotta cut it out and then cut the little braces out so it won't be so heavy. But with this, the stock axles and the stock spur gear is like a spool. It is complete. I mean, there's no slipping. Well, the spur gear that I actually have in here is a slipper clutch, so when I go to give it full throttle, it doesn't damage any of the internal components. And when I talk about internal components, as you see when I spin this, there's no resistance, and that's because this actually has differentials, front and rear. This is 4-wheel drive. And another thing is, as you can see, I turn the wheel a little bit, and as I slowly turn it, so that is proportional steering. So when I talk about proportional, that's what I mean. Instead of all the way, or all the way, like the Reaper I can just do a little bit, and it actually has a little setting from this button right here that what I can do is I can dial it down so the tires will only turn so far. So like when I'm racing and stuff, it won't turn so far and cause it to flip. I can actually make it so it will only go so far. Also, in a RC, a hobby grade RC car, the steering is done by a servo. And we've already gone over the steering, and this thing is done by a very weak 180 size motor, and went over how with the Pro 180s it just pretty much killed the board. And one thing I want to talk about with the Pro 180 motors is I got them initially for my Delta Ray, my Hobby Zone Firebird Delta Ray. And I was flying my maiden flight, both of my props flew off. So I had to go to my local hobby shop. Huge shout out to Glenn at The Hobby Shop in Stockbridge, Georgia. I will never go to another hobby shop unless I relocate to a different state or I get really far away. But basically what happened was I went and I replaced them, and I wanted to test to make sure that they would stay on, and as soon as I gave it 100% throttle, the prop flew off. Well, he turned me on to what's called prop adapters and collets. Basically what it is it's like a drill tightening down on a drill bit. You drill out the center of the propeller, and then you slide it down over the adapter, and then as you tighten this little cone right here, it tightens down on the shaft. So the shaft would actually be your drill bit. So I can no longer, these are no longer push fit propellers. It's either I have to loosen this to take them off, because I can no longer just slide them off. It does not happen, because when you tighten this, it locks down on the shaft. Another thing is the stock battery with this is a 1300 milliamp 26 amp max discharge, 2-cell. Well, I had a 2-cell 2200 milliamp hour with a 35C max discharge, and it's a Turnigy. And for those who say it cannot fit, yes it can. What you have to do is rip out some of this center styrofoam right here at the center of gravity, which is also the same place where you hold it to throw it, and you take it, it'll look like you're pushing it in upside down, but once you turn it like this, it's right side up. But it actually makes it less tail heavy and more, the center of gravity is right there. As you can tell, the battery's not in it, so it's leaning forward a little. But back to the difference between toy grade and hobby grade. Parts, replaceable parts, upgradable parts, anything like that. Like I said, I've already done a slipper clutch on my Dominus. As you can see, the hub carriers are orange. That is because they are aluminum. I replaced the stock plastic ones, which basically get warped because of the extra amount of power from the Sidewinder motor. So that's why I went to that. One of the big things, the biggest thing with the Reaper is the steering. It has the same type of steering as this little guy. This is my 136 scale ECX by Hobby Zone ECX kickflip. And when I turn, it is full left or full right. There is no in between. Unless you just let it go and it'll go forward. And there's a couple things I did to this. In the rear I put a stiffer spring. You can actually possibly see that red spring in there. It makes it so when you accelerate it doesn't hop, because that's one of the big things that I noticed with this is when you would accelerate it would just literally hop. Another thing with the kickflip is the charger comes in the controller, and the controller uses 4 AAA batteries, and this is what you use to charge. Well, I had a second controller from a kickflip that I had that went bad, and I took this out and I was just curious, will it charge with a USB cable? So what I did was I have a Proto X or a SD Synchro, whatever you want to call it. SD's Proto X, SD Synchro, it's the same thing. I cut off the Proto X charger and I soldered on the charger for the, I took out the charger from the transmitter, the old transmitter. As you can see, it's the same thing. It's just this one's coiled up because I never use it. And the only time I'll ever use this is if I'm out somewhere, because this, it only comes with a single 60 milliamp hour 15C battery, single cell, 3.7 volts. Well, I soldered on a second 60 milliamp hour from my other kickflip, so I'm now running 120 milliamp hour at 15C. So that would drain AAA batteries very quickly. So I was just goofing around seeing if it would work, and it turns out if you have a USB charging cord, you can cut it and then solder the connector from that goes to your kickflip to the charger, and these actually have a little red light that come on, and then once it's fully charged it'll go off. And then after I did that, I soldered the Proto X charger back on so I can use it for either. So that's basically the biggest things between a hobby grade and a toy grade. A toy grade, you're not going to be able to get upgradable parts. You're basically stuck with what you have. And I'm the type of person, when I get something, I immediately try to improve it. Because stock is never good enough for me. I always want it to go faster, higher, quicker, just any one of the things. So that's my Hellion transmitter telling me that it's on. So that's basically it. Another thing that I did with the Hellion is, this is the stock type axles that come with an axle hub assembly. It just slips in and out. Well, as you can see in here, there is a universal joint. Don't hurt yourself. But there's a universal joint. So there's no longer dog legs that will pop out of place, because it is physically attached to the hub. I did have one come apart, and all I had to do was take a drill bit that was the same size of the 2 pins. I had to find the square center section. Not an easy thing to do in the dark, but I was able to find it. And I put the big one in first, and then I had to drill through the big one for the little pin to fit through. And the hole that I put the little pin through actually holds the little pin in place, so each pin holds the other pin in place. And I'm actually going to do it to every other one, so I will have hardened steel parts in my U-joints. Another thing is the shocks. With a hobby grade, you actually have oil-filled shocks. These are nothing but plastic that it slides on, and as you see, there is not much travel. With these, there's a buttload of travel. I mean, it'll completely bottom out. The front actually moves more than the back, but not much. Most of that is actually in the suspension because it's so loose. I mean, you can see how loose the tires are. Another thing that shows that this is toy grade, not hobby grade. But that can be fixed a little bit by tightening that screw. But with another, yet again, with hobby grade, you can actually take the tires off and replace them altogether. So I think that about covers it. The RC Pro is sort of a halfway between a toy and a hobby RC, because like I said, it does run off a lithium-ion battery. My hobby, so tired, so I have a problem remembering things at the moment. Hobby type vehicle, things are interchangeable, so if something breaks, I can just go buy a new part and put it on and it'll be running again. If something breaks on the Reaper, it's all done, but at the same time, it does have a electronic speed controller, and there's a little LED right here, and if the motor gets too hot, this LED will stop blinking and you will not be able to go forward or backwards because it is letting the motor cool so you don't damage it. Like you can see in the back, there's this wire going to it and these two wires going to it. I'm pretty sure these are the temperature wires because they're thinner, and these are the actual power wires because they're not only thicker but they're harder to bend, so that would indicate better wire inside. But I believe that is it. There's actual foam inside these tires, which is surprising. There's foam inside a hobby car. I think these are super glued because they don't spin. The rims don't spin inside the tires. It actually comes with, like I said, it comes with a pretty good transmitter instead of that stupid. This is a professional transmitter. This is a Spectrum. But if you ever get a RC car that has a transmitter that looks like this, and you go forward by doing this, and you turn like this, that's not a hobby grade. That is a toy grade. So those are the main differences between toy grade, hobby grade. This plane is a starter plane. One really cool thing about it is it has gyros. If you ever get into any trouble, like I actually did and I crashed, this entire fuselage is replaceable for $40. But I crashed and the nose completely broke off. Some hot glue and some working with the styrofoam, and it actually went back together very well. But this is hobby grade. This is what I actually got the Pro 180 motors for. And lastly, this is my little Proto X. Very fun to play with inside. So is this. I've only ran this inside thus far. I've only had it for a little while. But there's the difference between toy grade, hobby grade. So, like many other videos, until next time, peace.